their goal is the destruction of Putin and his regime. We're a long way from that, in the same way that Putin's aspiration to destroy the Ukrainian regime is also a long way from coming to action.
Now let's turn to the conflicts in Ukraine. In the Times today, it's reported Russian fighters loyal to Ukraine have launched their biggest cross-border attack of the war so far. It's seen as a blow to President Putin's authority before the rubber-stamping elections of this week. We can talk to Major General Chip Chapman now. Welcome to you, Chip.
Good evening, John.
Chip, welcome. Can you give us your thoughts on the significance, the military significance, first of all, of these attacks being launched by these fighters aligned with Ukraine?
I don't think it's got any major significance. Last time we talked about this was May 23 in the Belgorod Oblast, when I talked about Russia moving the front into its own territory. There were fleeing civilians then, there will be fleeing civilians now. And I did talk about psychological ripples, which there will also be this week. It is embarrassing for Putin in the week of Putin 5.0's coronation, but I don't think it has any major operational significance.
Yes.
It is a raid. It is dangerous bothering. It is not likely to be something which can be held. The Russians will mobilize against this. What it does do ultimately is play into this notion of partisans and Machiavelli's line that the ruler of a city accustomed to freedom can never sleep easily. So we still have pretty big solidarity in terms of the Russian population supporting the war. We still have no leakage in the Kremlin in terms of an incipient coup. And we still have the Russian army holding firm in terms of no notions of mutiny. So it is this dangerous bothering. It is not any operational strategic significance.
So with these Russian, as it were, rebellious battalions crossing the border and launching their attack, it's about getting under the skin of the Kremlin and the leader in the Kremlin.
Yeah, it is. And as I said, the first one was in May 23. But the more important one, of course, was in June 23, and no one joined the Pied Piper of Prigozhin as he was marching to Moscow, as these guys actually want to do. Their goal is the destruction of Putin and his regime. We're a long way from that, in the same way that Putin's aspiration to destroy the Ukrainian regime is also a long way from coming to action.
How do you weigh the progress of the war so far, Chip? And we've seen in recent days worries and reports from the front line in this war of ammunition running short for Ukrainian troops, which is obviously a problem because it's been a war of attrition.
It is. I think one of the things that the Russians are trying to do at the moment is attrition by overstretch, and there are certain capabilities of the Ukrainians that we absolutely can see that they have problems with. I think one of the ones that we've seen in the last couple of weeks is because of the destruction of the first destruction of a HIMARS system and the destruction of an S-300, which at the moment look like they're providing protection for Pokrovsk, which is about 80 kilometers from Avdiivka. That probably occurred because they've run out of ammunition for the short and medium range surface-to-air missiles. The sort of incipient good news, though, is that we think that the 800,000 rounds of 155 artillery ammunition that have been sourced by the Czechs are going to arrive shortly. And I think you're going to get an announcement today from the Americans that another £300 million package has been found, which will give them additional ATACMS. This is not part of the supplemental request, which is still stuck in the House of Representatives, but I think is part of the from savings from a previous army contract for Ukrainian weapons under the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative. It's sort of creative accounting. So it's not necessarily all doom and gloom, but you can say, rather like I did in June 22, that the Ukrainians are possibly losing slowly. That doesn't mean that the Russians will be able to seize and hold Ukraine. They're far from it, but they will be able to disrupt and disable. And of course, it's finding ways to divide the international community and search for laggards, which is the important thing. And we'll see more of this, I think, in the next week when the Pope's speech, which will come out in full on the 20th of March, will also be seen as a potential laggard in the way that he characterized the war and what Ukraine might do in suing for peace.
So what value, what importance do you, Chip, attach to hearing the leader of France, President Emmanuel Macron, talking about French boots on the ground if it came to the point that Russia were winning the war in a very decisive way and regaining serious territory.
Well, you can put boots on the ground as a sovereign nation without doing that as part of a NATO alliance. The two things can be separated. What is clear is that the key players in Europe do not want Russia to win this war. It's still a war which needs to be unlosable from the perspective of things like the UN Charter, the rule of law, peace and security of the world, if you believe all those sorts of things, because Russia invaded Ukraine. It's the 1991 sovereign borders and all those things which flow from that. He can make that sovereign decision if he so wishes. So could any other country separate from the NATO alliance.